when you're talking about the issue of going cross-platform, a lot of developers cite control imbalances or performance issues as reasons why not to go cross-platform with their games. If somebody's on the PC, they're using a mouse and keyboard, or somebody on a mobile device that's used touch interface. How did you design around these challenges? And are there other design considerations to account for there? Like, do any particular platform crossovers, for example, PC to mobile or console to mobile, pose any special challenges when you're doing something like this?
There are definitely special considerations, particularly between PC console to mobile. PC to PS3, they're roughly on par in terms of capabilities. Obviously, good PC can outpace the PS3, but you can make the same game between those two platforms and not have to worry too much about things other than the control scheme. But mobiles, though, as Philip mentioned, they are getting much more powerful, still are not yet on par with what a home console can do, much less a PC. And so when we thought about doing Dungeon Defenders and doing cross-platform play in particular, we had to do certain design and tech considerations. That they run the gamut from performance-specific considerations such as, well, we can do 100 enemies simultaneously on PC and PS3. We can really blow it out. But on mobile right now, we're really limited to about 30 enemies. So how do we make the game just as challenging with 30 enemies versus 100? And what happens if you're playing a PS3 game and your mobile guy wants to join? He can't do 100 enemies. So what we came up with specific answers to situations like that. If a mobile guy joins your game, you specifically choose in your game settings, I want to allow mobile players to join my game. And if a mobile guy joins, it scales down the number of enemies to 1/3 what you naturally have between PC and console. And but to keep the same game balance, roughly those enemies get 3 times as difficult. So statistically, it works out to roughly the same level of challenge. And then in cases like the interface, we had to design our HUD to be completely scalable to any arbitrary resolution and aspect ratio. And we're talking, all the way down to iPhone 3GS, so I think that's like, what, a 480 by 320 screen or something ridiculously low. And then you can run the game at 1920 by 1080 and get a perfectly, crisp, functional HUD. So we had to make sure we could design a GUI system that would handle that level of flexibility. And then also on the input side of things, we needed to provide a level of abstraction behind how the input worked, because we don't need to know or want to know over the network whether someone is on a gamepad, mouse, or a touchscreen. We just want to know what they want their character to do. And so we had to design the controls in such a way that it was abstract and not particularly dependent on how you were coming up with that character input. And what was sent over the network was basically abstracted physics and character actions. And all that didn't happen overnight, but over the course of some iteration, we figured out how we would design cross-platform gameplay to work along those lines.
Oh, got it. So, in addition to, that's just the design and the gameplay elements of things, but I'm sure there are a host of other issues that you have to account for as well when you're running. Essentially, this is, if games are a service now, when you enter an online arena, you guys are essentially operating a service across multiple platforms, and not all of them are open. So how do you manage, what are some of the other challenges that you guys have faced, and how did you kind of jump through some of the hoops to keep the game operating smoothly as a service for everybody?
The communities for each platform are vastly different, and there's some kind of balancing act going on there. For example, for a while we had in-app purchases on iOS, and they were relatively popular, and the hardcore players were not a big fan of them. They weren't required, so we didn't have an uprising. And they were not available on Android because Google didn't have an API yet. And we got tens, if not hundreds of emails every day asking why there aren't IAPs on Android, that people wanted them so badly. So we added them in, and it was a pretty big success. But on PC and console, they would hate in-app purchasing. Maybe less so on PC, and on console, it's not even necessarily doable in the same way it is on iOS and Android. So there's a lot of just community considerations. Another challenge, I guess, business-wise, is pricing. You have the same content on a mobile device that you have on a PC, you kind of have to split your message. You know, why do you get it for free on Android, and for $2.99 on iOS, and for $14.99 on PC? And it's not as challenging of an issue as you would think, but it does bring up complications when you have this vastly different community interacting. And furthermore, right now, there's no great way to just bundle it. We can't be like, you buy Dungeon Defenders and you get it on every platform. It's impossible, although we'd love to do it.
Furthermore, updating the game is a challenge technically. To kind of retain a unified online community, we like to have everybody playing in the same version. Oftentimes we'll do a major update, it will require it won't be backwards compatible from a network play standpoint, but every platform has its different processes to release an update in terms of how you go about that and how long it takes. Obviously on Android you can just shove it out there, but on iOS you have to go through a certification period, and on PS3 you have to go through a longer certification period, and on PC there's a bunch of different digital distributors. At least on Android there's Market, but on PC there's Steam, and there's Direct2Drive, and there's various other distributors, so they all need to get that update as well. So far we've only had to do cross-platform updates between iOS and Android, and at first we just kind of released them immediately as soon as they were approved, but that also, the community didn't like that either, because some people would get an update before others, and we got a lot of bitching about that. But the way we now approach that is we get the update approved, and then we can, once it's approved, it's in the pipeline, we can then kind of pull the trigger and release them simultaneously. So that will be done also when we have PC and PS3 in the mix, but it'll be a little bit more time consuming and complex.
So those are some of the headaches. Did you guys in the process of this learn from surmounting the challenges and kind of develop some more tried and true strategies to kind of flatten that difficulty curve a little bit going forward? Yeah,
one of the things that I kind of just alluded to is we learn to take things at the pace that's going to be appropriate. I, by my nature, is kind of an impatient engineer. I like to release things as soon as they're ready, as soon as they're done. Okay, it's done. Shove it out there. Let people play it. But that can fracture the community base, especially dealing with cross-platform play. So now we kind of approach things, all right, let's get it finished. Let's get it beta tested. Let's get it certified. And then when all that's done, we can release it simultaneously. Because people seem to get more angry, our community, when things are released piecemeal than when they're released smoothly as a kind of a unified approach. So that's improved and has been, it's been a dialogue with our end users. We've honestly, frankly asked them, what would you like? Would you like us to release something as soon as we have it on platform A, or would you like us to kind of keep everything consistent? And the majority seem to prefer that everybody kind of gets the same thing all at once. So we tend to try and ask our community in many cases for what the answers, what the best solutions are, because there's no guidebook for this. This is new territory.
Right.
And I guess I can make an interesting comparison. Every independent developer wants to be like Minecraft or something. You can update every week. You can really engage your community. And now that we have cross-platform, engaging our community like that splits up our community, and they actually get upset if we don't approach things in a more corporate-like fashion in terms of waiting for everything to be ready and then rolling it out all at once.
A really good example of this is that we are about to prepare a major update for the cross-platform play called Dungeon Defenders Second Wave, and that's kind of a massive update that's going to be released simultaneously on all the platforms. And we deal with that as kind of a big milestone as opposed to just releasing it as a bunch of minor incremental updates over time.
Okay. So the one kind of big, we'll talk about the future of online in the game in a minute, but the one big online feature that you guys have on display now, obviously, is matchmaking to all the platforms, and you used our services to do that. But I'm kind of curious, how did you go about handling setting up all the matchmaking? Not aside from just saying, hey, we use GameSpy, what did you guys actually do to enable all this stuff?
Well, the matchmaking service with GameSpy was fairly simple to port between iOS and Android. There were just a few definitions that had to be changed to match string formats between the different platforms. I think that's all as part of the stock GameSpy code now. And we did do some specific things with matchmaking to make our online play a little bit smarter. For one thing, we send information through matchmaking about whether you're playing on iOS or an Android device, and even what kind of Android device you're playing on. There are different, mainly the chipset that you're using, what graphics type you can support. And we use that both for matchmaking purposes. We, for example, do not allow someone on a 3G connection to host an online game. They can host, we basically don't let them do it because it's crappy. They can join an online game, but you don't want someone with that little bandwidth available to them acting as your server. And we also use that kind of data in terms of matchmaking for statistics gathering. We know how many people play online with a Tegra Android device or a Power VR Android device, and that enables us to kind of get some information about what the majority of our users are running the game on, and we can focus on improvements for that if there are a lot of people who have been running it on a certain kind of graphics card. And we, of course, do know whether they're on a mobile or PC or PS3, and we use that to scale the game accordingly when, say, a mobile user joins your online game. If you're hosted on PC, we scale back for performance reasons.
Got it. So you mentioned gathering some statistics, like how deeply instrumented is the game at this point, and do you have any ambitions to kind of wire it up to more analytics or metrics in the future?
It's certainly not as wired up as it could be right now. The leaderboards in the game are cross-platform as well, of course, and that is our primary method of statistics gathering. But we could take it further. Right now, for example, we only write statistics when you complete a level. But we could write statistics throughout gameplay on a more rapid basis and really use that for a lot of analytics in terms of how much time people are spending at various locations in the game and how far they get in the game, and really we can gather from that on a macroscopic level what their overall user experience tends to be. That would be useful. It's definitely something that we, among the additional GameSpy features we plan to incorporate in the coming weeks, that's one of them.
Got it. So, we talked a little bit about the approach. You guys have had 1 million downloads so far. What's the actual, aside from just the raw input of downloads, what's the reception been like specifically around a lot of the cross-platform stuff? Do people appreciate the fact, it's great to talk about, hey, iOS players can play against Android people. Do they appreciate the fact that they're able to do this? Has it actually shown benefits to the game?
I think consumers appreciate it a lot more than we as game developers appreciate it. Actually, to them, it's like something that's magical. They see a PS3 playing with a PC, playing with an Android phone, playing with an iPad, and it blows their mind. And we constantly see user feedback that, I can't believe this is possible. How is this happening? This shouldn't be happening, because they've been fed so much information that this can't happen.
Yeah, or shouldn't happen.
It shouldn't happen. So the fact that we're doing it has been a huge bonus, basically. I mean, a lot of our publicity for the title, we've had a great reception. We've gotten 9.0s across the board for reviews, but a lot of our awareness comes from the fact that we are cross-platform. And that's part of both having a much larger audience of people able to play the game. We have mobile phone users, we have console users, we have PC users, but it's also just from the technical wizardry that people perceive from this process.
Got it. So ultimately worth going through some of the initial challenge. Okay.